Hi, my name is Nathan Wiggin, and this is my presentation on making online surveys accessible to people with disabilities. Here's a brief overview of what we're going to cover. We'll start with who am I? I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to talk about, give you an overview of the scope of the problem, tools that are needed to address accessibility and ensure you have some level of success. And then from here, it's going to be a little bit of a case study. We're going to go into the out-of-the-box experience. We're going to try a separate one called separate but equal. And then this like third time is a charm. So these are three different iterations that we have tried to address accessibility. And then, the future. What has Sawtooth done since I started banging my head against this problem? And what are some pieces of advice you can take away from all of this? Let's start with who am I? Well, my name, I'm Nathan Wiggin. I'm a founding member and partial owner of Come Engage. We do community engagement all across the country. I have 15 to 20 years in the marketing research industry. About 10 of that has been using Sawtooth software off and on, but it really hasn't been until about the past year to year and a half that I have really started immersing myself into all of the intricacies and all of the coding and all the things that can be done. My role, I am the Chief Solutions Officer. If anyone has a problem, be it a client or be it someone else at Come Engage, they come to me, and my job is to try to find a solution to that problem. Sometimes we build it, sometimes we buy it. Most of the time, I talk to people who are smarter than me. The next point, I am not an expert in accessibility issues. Up until we ran against this project a little over a year ago, I had not given a single thought about accessibility and the role that it plays with surveys. I just kind of got put into this, which actually answers the question, why am I here? And it is because I got thrust into it. This is really a case study for one of our clients, Sound Transit. It's the regional transportation agency up near Seattle, Washington. We have a long-standing contract with them to do a whole variety of studies. And as we finished up one wave of studies, we were told that we had to make sure that this was accessible for blind people to use on computers or people with vision impairments. And without giving it a thought, I said, of course it is, and passed off the link to their expert, who happens to be blind, and said, this doesn't work at all, solve it, or you're going to be in big trouble. So we got to work on solving it. But before we get there, I want to tell you the things that are not going to be discussed. No, not happening. Anything regarding the law. I am not a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. I know that there are laws. I will cite one or two. That is it. Also not going to share any of my specific programming tricks or any of the coding. And this is not because I'm selfish and I think I did a great job. It's actually the exact opposite. First off, Sawtooth had actually just released an update about a week ago that makes most of the custom coding that we tried to do irrelevant. And the second thing is, I'm not a coder. I'm terrible at it, and I don't want people to see it because it's really disgusting, and I'm embarrassed by it. So here's the things that I'm hoping to answer or cover throughout the course of this presentation. The first is just an overview of what is the problem. The second is to go through the user experience, just like the out of the box, and go through the process. So 2 and 3 are basically the same. And then the final one is going over considerations, improvements, and things that I hope that you'll take away and keep in mind as you walk out of the room, if this is live, or away from your computer, or just think in the future. So let's go on to the scope of the problem. I'm going to apologize. There's technical issues with this laptop. For some reason, it will just continue to crash as we go through this, and I will try to do it as fast as possible. And perhaps the best way is to just do this. So you're not going to see any of my spiffy stuff, but hey, at least it will work. All right. The number one thing is we know that there's some missing data. A census report from 2014 indicates that there's over 12 million Americans that have vision impairments. Worldwide, this stat says 190 million. I can't believe it's not more, that have significant disabilities. I had a hard time finding raw statistics and real data on this. So this is just what I could find using a relatively brief search with a little bit of help. The biggest issue is these guys often get overlooked. Right? They have separate needs, they have separate desires, and they get overlooked by the marketing research communities. And I know this because I had overlooked them for 15 years. Now, the second issue is you could get sued. I'm listing the classic lawsuit, United States versus Astria Health. Whenever I looked up the accessibility issues, this is the lawsuit that was mentioned all over. And as I mentioned earlier, I know that this can happen. The whole reason that we got involved in accessibility issues at all is because we were being threatened by one of our clients, at a minimum, to just lose the contract, possibly legal trouble. So keep this in mind. So what are some things that you need? Like the tools, the packing for the journey. The first thing that you need is some type of screen reading software. JAWS by Freedom Scientific tends to be the most popular. It's the one that I hear mentioned most often and is the one that was recommended to me. I don't know if it's the best. I'm just telling you that it's there. You need good quality headphones. You really do. People are so visual that you just need to be able to isolate the sound and go through and listen to the survey. You need patience, a lot of emotional support, and a blindfold, either literal or metaphorical. We actually found an extension called Chrome Lens. I want to say thank you to Josh at Sawtooth Software for helping me find Chrome Lens, and it works very well. We'll run through it a little bit here. All right, now to the fun part. We're going to go through a very, very short survey, and we're actually going to do this 2 times. The first time, we are just going to go through the survey like a normal person, normal site, clicking on it, and we're going to go through about 3 or 4 questions. All right, so this is a fake survey for demonstration purposes. The link is contained in the presentation. Feel free to go after it at any point you want. All right? I'm not going to read the questions. This is a multiple select question, so I'm going to say I like commuter rail. Very, very simple. Click on next. How many one-way trips do I take in a given day? 12. Sure. You'll notice that this red box appears, and we'll get to that in a moment. This is kind of a cool grid. We have it set up using this spiffy piece of Java code so that it expands. The client specifically requested it, and I think it's kind of spiffy. So we're going to say a B+. All right, moving on. And a standard grid. As I said, there is nothing special about this at all. Nothing. Now, we're going to be blind.
Input list box. JAWS for Windows FSIN32 object. JAWS for Windows HTTPS toolbar. Enter.
Here's JAWS.
Page has no links. This is a fake survey for demonstration purposes. This survey has no considerations toward accessibility. We will run through this 2 times. Left parent, don't worry, it's short right parent. The first time we will run through it like normal. Then we will do so as a person with a vision impairment. As we go through the first time, I want you to think of improvements can be made for accessibility purposes. Click quote next quote to continue. Next. Next. Next.
Yeah. There you go. It's slow. As you get more used to screen readers, especially people who use them all the time, they'll speed it up quite a bit. So it's not quite this tedious, but you can get a rough idea of how tedious this is. So our first question is at multiple select.
Next. Next. Page has no links. Which of the following public transportation services do you use? Left parent, select all that apply. Right parent. To get missing image descriptions, open the context menu. Graphic, light rail, paratransit, bus, commuter rail, something else. Left parent, specify. Right parent, edit back. Next 0%, 100%.
Okay.
One back.
So wait a second. Uh-oh.
Enter. Autofill list box expanded. Enter. https://
Okay, I wrote this survey. B.
Adapted. Back. Next.
Next. Okay, I think I answered a question. I think I did. I don't know.
Next.
Yes.
Next. Page has no links. How many one-way trips did you take on something else? Left parent, specify. Right parent in the past 7 days. Edit back. Next 0%, 100%. 100%. Next. Back. Blank. Edit. Type in text.
Type in text. So, what's the question?
Escape.
Okay.
Enter. Back. Next. Enter.
I answered something.
Next. Page has no links. The grid below is a bit unique.
So, as you can see, I'm trying to mute this JAWS thing here. As you can see, it's actually pretty difficult. I wrote the survey. I know what's going on. I know what the screen is supposed to look like. I know where I'm supposed to click, but you can't click. You have to navigate using your keyboard, and it only goes down, and I don't know what is a fillable box and what is not a fillable box. So it's understandable that the initial out-of-the-box experience over a year ago was basically unusable for people with disabilities. And when Sound Transit got their hands on this, you now understand why it was so scary for everyone involved, because we had all just assumed that this was going to work, and it didn't. So take two. We tried again. It's what we call separate but equal. So there's a practical definition, which is kind of creating two surveys, one for normal users and a second version of the survey for taking accessibility issues into account. This is similar to what is actually being done with multiple languages when you're trying to do a survey in multiple languages, at least the way that I know how to do it. It's you duplicate your study and upload it and then branch to it. There is a legal definition of separate but equal. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer, but my understanding is it goes back to race relation days. You can't have a whites only and a coloreds only bathroom, right? Even if they're equal quality bathrooms, which is the experience we're trying to provide, right? Equal quality surveys. You can't have two separate surveys. It's just a bad thing. So we're going to take a look at our second one, again, normally. So the first thing you're going to notice is we have these three options right off the bat. This automatically tells you that this is a separate version of this survey specifically for screen readers, and then everyone else uses this all others option. Our client was using Internet, one person from our client's team was using Internet Explorer 6. So we actually had to do another version of the survey for IE6. So we're going to click through this very fast. We'll probably just go through a screen or two. Right? It looks pretty much exactly like what we just saw, right? No differences there. So we're going to go back, and I want you to visually be able to see what the difference is if you're using screen reading software. So far, there's no difference, right? That seems to work. Aha! Right? We no longer have grids. And not only do we no longer have grids, we no longer have the expandable grids. You just have this. And it still works. Again, it works. It's just fine. But it is a separate situation. So now I'm going to run through this rather quickly with the screen reading software on, so you can get a rough idea. I'm not going to turn it off, this screen off. I just kind of want you to see
Mute
how
that
it
button
reads.
to act. HT.
Oh, so we're using screen reading software.
Screen dash reading software. Select this option. Radio button checked. 1 of 3.
Okay, that's actually the first improvement that we had to make. If you noticed, we had no idea of being able to tell what was and wasn't checked. They weren't labeled that way. That's what kind of kicked off a lot of this, was how do you know if you had selected or checked an answer? And obviously that got resolved. Knowing if you select an answer
There are
is
no
important.
back. Next. Enter. Next. Page has no links. When you ride, which of the following services do you use? Left parent select all that apply. Right parent Sounder North. Left parent Everett to Seattle. Right parent checkbox not checked. Tacoma link checkbox not checked. Space. Tacoma link checkbox checked. To clear checkmark press space bar. Link sound back. Next.
So automatically we're way ahead of where we were, because we know that there's a checkbox there. We know if it's been checked. We know if it hasn't been checked. Yeah, let's turn on blindness and see what happens.
Enable combo box full block. Enable sounder back. Next. Enter. Next page
Okay.
has no links. Now we would like to ask about some of your general impressions of sound transit. If you were giving sound transit an overall report card, where A means excellent, C means average, and F means failing, what overall grade would you give them? Radio button not checked F. Radio button not checked D minus. Radio button not checked D. Radio button not checked D plus. Radio button not checked C minus space. C minus. Radio button checked. 5 of 51.
Oh man, there's 51 fields. What? Okay, so this was a bug that we had to figure out how to fix, right? Because if we turn our vision back on,
Tools. Enable lens. Enable
it is
lens.
basically
Radio
saying,
button check C minus. 5 of 51.
it is basically counting up everything on here and counting those. I'm going to turn the screen reading software
Settings.
off.
Input list.
The volume off at least. Okay. So that's just a view. It works, right? There's a lot of issues with it. You know, the primary one is it's kind of ugly. It's obvious that you programmed more than one survey and then you're just like directing and branching people out. And I learned that people can get offended by that because you are treating them as like this separate but yet equal type thing, and it can be offended. Any and all changes need to be applied to multiple places. When you're programming the survey, any change that you make in question 1 for vision people has to then again be made in question 1 for the screen reading software, and it just causes all sorts of problems. You have the same thing on the back end, right? You now have 2 variables where one would do, you have to deal with all of the recoding. It was very difficult, but I mean, it worked. It got us through. We managed to limp through that next phase of data collection. There are legal problems. Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer, but it can get you into hot water. You know, you could be running up against a separate but equal thing. And if someone wants to file a claim, you can. So the legal issues aside, the same like practical problems apply to languages, which is my next big thing. So the third time was the charm. We got it working. Our goals were to get rid of the separate but equal version, combine everything into one survey, one set of questions, one set of variables, make the entire experience easier for everyone. We'll take a look in just a moment, but I want to tell you that there's an unexpected challenge that we ran across, and I'm pretty sure it's resolved in the version we're going to look at. That's screen readers read left to right, top to bottom. They don't go backwards. They don't know to go backwards. So if something changes above it or to the left of where the screen reader is, it's not going to recognize that something has changed and not go back there. At least in our experience, it might have been improved since then. Again, I'm not an expert, but this is where we landed. So let's take a look. I think we will just kind of run everything all at once with the screen reading software on. There we go. So let's turn on.
Mute that button to act.
Yeah.
Sound transit.
Oh, just go next.
Next button to activate, press enter. Next button to activate, press enter. Page has no links. Sound transit customer survey. Let's start by getting some information about your use of sound transit. How often did you ride sound transit prior to COVID-19? Stay-at-home restrictions. Left parent March 2020. Right parent. Radio button checked 4+ days per week. Radio button not checked 2-3 days per week. Radio button not checked space about once a week. Radio button checked 3 of 7.
Notice that. We now know that this is 3 of 7 on this page. So we were able to have the screen reader recognize how many select options there are within a specific question instead of the entire screen. That was a really nice feature. It was requested. I didn't build it. I'm pretty sure Josh built it. Or Zach. Zach built it, but it's really spiffy.
How
Also,
often do you currently ride sound transit?
you can tab between screens now.
Week radio button not checked. Space 4+ days per week. Radio button checked 1 of 8. How long have you been a sound transit rider? For less than 6 months. 6 months 1 to 2 space 1 to 2 years. Radio button checked 4 of 10.
The other thing that we learned is that people who use keyboard shortcuts will oftentimes use B to represent button. So now you can just press B.
Back button. Next button.
There you go.
Enter. Next button to activate. Press enter. Page has no links. Sound transit customer survey when you ride. Which of the back button. Wrapping to top. Next button. Enter. Sound transit customer
Now,
survey. Next button to activate. Press enter. Page has no links. Sound transit customer survey. Now we would like to ask you about some of your general setting.
I'm going to turn that off because you know how this is. Oh, I'm not going to turn that off because you need to know how this actually reads through the grid.
Mute. Sound table. Column 4. Row 2. Column 4. Row 2. See left parent average right parent back button to activate. Press enter. Back button to activate. Press enter. Page has no links. Sound transit customer survey. Now we would like to ask you about some of your general impressions of sound transit. If you were giving sound transit an overall report card, where A means excellent, C means average, and F means failing, what overall grade would you give them? Once you select the letter grade, it will expand and you may then add a plus or minus for each grade. Table with 8 columns and 2 rows. F left parent failing, right parent D, C left parent average, right parent C minus C plus B, A left parent excellent, right parent overall grade. Radio button not checked. F left parent failing, right parent. Radio button not checked. D. Radio button checked. C left parent average, right parent. Radio but space. Column 5 row 2. C minus radio button checked. 1 of 1.
So there's a lot of stuff that is happening here that you take for granted. You don't notice unless you have headphones on, unless you listen to this. One of the first things you notice is that it tells you where you are in the position of the grid. It tells you what the radio button is doing, right? Where it is. So you know that you're on overall grade. You know that your column is C, or in this case, C minus. The second thing that you may have noticed.
Column 8 blank. B. Space. B radio button checked. 1 of 1.
We're still able to keep the expansion. But if you recall, screen readers read left to right. So we couldn't have the B minus pop up to the left of the B because the screen reader would never know that that B minus was there. So we just moved everything to the right. So now you know B.
B blank. Space. B plus radio button. B minus B plus radio left pair back button. Next button.
I'll turn the screen reader off. Okay. So that's basically where we ended up. And this was about October, give or take, of 2021. It's the last time we had run a wave. We're planning on doing one, I believe, in May or June of 2021. It just depends on what happens with COVID. And that's where we ended up. And actually, it's very good. You can still tell that it's a bit buggy, but it works, and it works fairly well. The data is clean. We actually got some completes from people using screen readers, and we were very happy overall. But what's coming up next, and what are some important takeaways? And I actually want to start with the takeaways. The biggest one is we all take vision for granted. Right? The vast majority of us can see. As a species, we're sight dependent, and we just take it for granted. And we need to consider those who can't see. Right? We need to experience what it is that they experience in order to even attempt to understand it. The second important takeaway, which sounds obvious when you read it, but it really had an impact on me, was that blind users don't use mice. They don't use a computer using a mouse and keyboard, like the majority of the world does, because they don't know where they're pointing with their mouse, so they don't know where they're clicking. So they have a whole series of keyboard navigation shortcuts. The third, and in all honesty, it should be at the top of this list, but it's try it yourself. The links are in this presentation, or just build your own quick little survey and try using a screen reader. See what happens. You will get frustrated, but you will want to learn how to improve it. Get an expert. Reach out, talk to somebody. I can give you the contact. Marianne Mendez was the one who helped me. I can give you her contact information. You can contact me. It's all at the end of this presentation if you need to. For those of you who do code, save and comment your code, exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I don't code. I didn't do this. I do now. I still don't code, but I at least comment the bad code that I write. And use the questionnaire library. When you get something working, we would save it to the library. We know that it works, so we can pull it back out. The other important takeaway is that Sawtooth support is utterly amazing. None of this would have been possible. I spent hours upon hours in the forums talking back and forth, particularly with Zach, emailing back and forth with support, and on the phone with various different people from Sawtooth and helping me work this out. This is not a commercial for them in any way, shape, or form, but they are some of the best support staff I have ever encountered. So what's next? Well, for me, my next big push forward is I'm trying to incorporate additional languages into a single survey instead of branching people out. I've started the support path down this. It seems to be substantially easier. But that's my next step. And then hopefully I'll have all of this, including additional languages, working with JAWS. I'm going to continue to refine what we have worked on to make it easier for proficient screen reader users to navigate. Sawtooth has hired a subject matter expert, Josh. He did a whole bunch of work for a long time, and a week ago, as of this recording, they released a major update to dramatically improve the out-of-the-box accessibility experience. I have not had the chance to try it. I am going to. We're going to try to program the new survey using this new out-of-the-box experience in a short version and see what happens. I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be easier and better than what we spent a long time trying to build just through support tickets. And they're continually working to update and improve their product. I feel very special having kind of pushed this onto Sawtooth because they hired somebody and they're coming back and forth and they're telling me what they're working on. And I know that they're making continual improvements to the product and to accessibility in general. And it's an awesome, absolutely amazing thing. Last but not least, I have to give some very special thanks. The first one is to our client, Sound Transit. They are the ones who lit the match under our butts and got us moving on them. If they hadn't done that, this never would have become an issue to me, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn and talk about it. I mentioned earlier that we had an expert. So Mary Ann Mendez helped tremendously in helping me figure out how to improve, what to improve, what is normal, what is not normal, what I'm supposed to be expecting, how tables should work, how all of these things should work. Her and I spent countless recordings back and forth, spent hours on the phone, hours on email. She is very, very knowledgeable. She is actually legally blind, and her job is to help market researchers understand accessibility and plan for it. And last but not least, I have to give a shout out again to Sawtooth support. We'll start with Zachary. He and I talked for a long time through the forums. And Josh, I really enjoyed the phone conversations with him. He's taught me a lot. I'm just very happy. Everyone in general. If to give you a final takeaway, just try it. Just go through this presentation, click on the surveys, install some screen reading software, and put on some headphones. It's important. You need to understand it, and it's interesting. All right, my contact information is at the bottom. Please feel free to email me. If you want to talk, you can book some time with me through Calendly. It's been great. I appreciate talking to you guys, and I really hope that you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.